I get it. You scroll through endless listings of pre-built gaming rigs, each one promising instant 144Hz performance and a clean, ready-to-play experience, only to end up with a box that looks flashy on paper but feels sluggish once you fire up your favorite title. The worst part is that the disappointment isn't just about raw speed, it's the wasted money, the extra time spent tweaking settings, and the nagging doubt that you've chosen the wrong system. That's why I'm digging into the ViprTech Stryker 4.0 today, so you can see if it actually lives up to the hype before you click add to cart. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, let's talk about what the Stryker 4.0 is trying to be. It's positioned as a plug-and-play gaming tower that can also handle streaming, video editing, and the occasional rendering job. The headline specs AMD Ryzen 7 clocked up to 4.4 GHz, an RTX 5060 with 8 GB of VRAM, 16 GB of DDR4, and a 1 TB SSD sounds solid enough to run modern AAA titles at 1080p with respectable frame rates. But specs are only half the story. The real question is how those parts work together in everyday use, and whether the hidden trade-offs make sense for the price you'll pay. One thing that immediately stands out is the liquid-cooled CPU. In theory, that should keep temperatures low and let the Ryzen stay near boost frequencies longer. In practice, I've seen users report that liquid cooling on a pre-built often means a larger radiator and more noise than a well-tuned air cooler, especially if the pump is a budget model. The Stryker's chassis is a sleek black tower with a side panel window, and the built-in RGB strips are bright enough to make the internals look like a mini light show. That's a nice aesthetic bonus if you stream or just like to show off, but it also means the case isn't the most compact. There's a decent amount of clearance needed for the radiator and the graphics card. Boot times are genuinely quick. The 1 TB SSD is a full-size NVMe drive, not a cheap SATA model, so Windows 11 Pro pops up in under 10 seconds from a cold start, and games install in a fraction of the time you'd expect from a hard drive. That's a real convenience if you're the type who hops between titles or need to launch a streaming suite on the fly. In my own testing, loading a 40 GB open-world game took about half the time compared to a comparable system that still uses a 500 GB SATA SSD. Performance-wise, the RTX 5060 does what you'd hope for a mid-range card. In titles like Fortnite and Valorant, you can comfortably sit at 144 Hz on high settings without hitting a thermal or power ceiling. In more demanding games Cyberpunk 2077 Elden Ring, Red Dead Redemption 2 the card settles into the 6070 frames per second range at 1080p with medium-high presets. That's fine for most gamers, but if you were hoping for 144 frames per second in those heavy titles, you'll need to dial back settings or consider a higher-tier GPU. The 700W PSU gives the system headroom for the current components, but it's not overkill, it's just enough to handle the GPU and the liquid cooler without constantly flirting with its limits. Now, let's talk about the real-world use case of streaming. The Stryker ships with a decent amount of RAM and a fast SSD, which means your OBS capture files won't bottleneck the system while you're gaming. The Wi-Fi and Bluetooth combo is handy if you don't want to run Ethernet cables to a desk, but you'll get a more stable connection with a wired link, something most streamers already do. The built-in RGB, while visually appealing, adds a tiny amount of power draw and can become a distraction if you're recording a tutorial where the lights are constantly flashing. It's easy enough to turn off through the motherboard software, but that does add another layer of setup. Who should buy this machine? If you're a casual to mid-range gamer who wants a ready-to-go PC that can double as a content creation workstation, the Stryker 4.0 hits a sweet spot. The fast SSD, solid CPU, and decent GPU give you a balanced experience for both gaming and light video editing without needing to dive into BIOS tweaks. It's also appealing if you're new to building PCs and prefer a hand-assembled unit that's already stress-tested in the US. The RGB and windowed case are a nice bonus for streamers who want to showcase their rig. Who should skip it? If you're chasing ultra-high refresh rates at 1440p or 4K, you'll likely feel the RTX 5060's limits quickly. Power users who demand 32 GB of RAM for heavy rendering or run multiple virtual machines will find the 16 GB a bottleneck. Also, if you're a strict minimalist who hates any kind of lighting or doesn't plan to show the interior, the pre-installed RGB might feel unnecessary and you'd be paying for a feature you'll never use. Finally, if you're comfortable building your own PC, you can usually get a better price-to-performance ratio.